This is the Mobile Tech Podcast, brought to you by worldpodcasts.com. Now here's your host, Tech Girl, Miriam Joire.
Hi, and welcome to the Mobile Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Miriam Joire, and today is Tuesday, November 13th, 2018. I'm in Taiwan, outside of Taipei at MediaTek's headquarters, and I'm here with a bunch of really awesome folks I'm going to introduce. I've got Kevin Keating of MediaTek.
Hi, Miriam. Glad to be here.
You're in the marketing department, right?
Basically. I am. Yep.
And then I've got Jerry Yu of MediaTek. Hi, Jerry.
Yeah, I'm in charge of the intelligent device business group.
Fantastic. And then I've got Hadl Simons here of Android Authority. Thanks for being here, Hadl.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's a real privilege.
Wonderful. So I want to spend about the first 20 minutes, half hour of the show talking with the MediaTek team here about the devices, the products, the chips, everything, the ecosystem, the whole universe of what MediaTek does. Because I think a lot of people just don't know and understand what's going on. And then Hadl and I will continue and cover some of the news items for the week. So let's get started with maybe one of you can tell us about what MediaTek makes chips.
Yep.
And what you provide chips for. What are the devices that we're familiar with that you provide chips for?
Yeah.
Jerry?
Yeah. Actually, MediaTek is set up from the 1997. Yeah. Our first product line is in the optical storage, which is used in the computer.
Yep.
Yeah. So from optical storage, we gradually expand our core technology from the servo control to multimedia, just like the DVD player, BD player. Yeah. And this is our second product line. And then we expand from multimedia to the TV, like the smart TV. So right now, MediaTek is the worldwide number one market share in the TV this industry. Yeah. So after that, from around the 2000, we start to develop the mobile phone in the 2G feature phone.
Right.
Yeah. So we already have over 18 years experience to develop the mobile phone. Yeah. So I think that's our, all of our product line, we move from the optical storage to multimedia player, TV, and the last one is the, smartphone.
Right.
Yeah.
I would say that the quickest way for us to talk about it is three areas: mobile, home, and auto.
Right.
And I don't think a lot of people know that we do about 1.5 billion devices a year. So we like to say we've already met. So you may not know it, but MediaTek's already in your life.
What MediaTek, how MediaTek is in their lives? Because I don't think they know.
They don't.
I certainly didn't know.
They don't. And Jerry covered a lot of it. With things like even going back to the CD player and the Blu-ray player. That's been in people's lives and in their homes for a long time.
Something that's pretty bleeding edge right now that people are coveting and buying in droves.
You mean things you can speak to and have them do things for you?
Yeah.
We're really dragging this on. The reality is there are products from Amazon, a lot of the products from Amazon. So the Echo devices, the tablets, right, as well. So
Yes.
that's a lot of devices right
Fire
there.
TV.
Fire TV, yeah, the sticks, the Fire Sticks.
Yeah, Fire Sticks.
Are you able to share anything about did you work with Google on their devices at all?
Chromebook.
Okay, Chromebook.
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. There you go. So you see, there are a lot of products that are touched by MediaTek. And I know a lot of you listeners right now know that MediaTek makes chips that end up in a lot of phones, especially in India and in China. There's a lot of people on the show listening from India. I know this. So it's not a surprise to you, but I think a lot of people don't understand, for example, that you do automotive stuff too.
Right.
So tell us a little bit more about that as well.
Yeah. The automotive business is relatively new for us. It's about 4 years old. And we do probably 4 core areas, which is infotainment, which could be, screens in your car and instrument panels, telematics, MF wave radar, which is going to do some of your auto parking and sensors, whatever you want to detect around and outside your car. And then V8, which is basically autonomous driving.
The thing that was really interesting about Boris's presentation earlier today, Boris is the person in charge of the auto side of MediaTek. And he gave us a presentation. He was showing us a use case where instead of using ultrasonic sensors in the back of your car, like your little round things you see on your bumper that are currently using for parking assist and other detections, that you guys have developed technology using millimeter wave radar for that. And I mean, traditionally in modern cars, millimeter wave radar is used for things like radar cruise control and emergency braking, emergency collision avoidance, but very rarely is it used for short distance type stuff like parking sensing and stuff. So that to me was kind of interesting. I never know. Like my Tesla has the combination of everything, but radar is really only used for front facing forward, not for anything in the rear of the car. So I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, I think you are right. Actually, it's from my point of view, it's a breakthrough of the sensor. Using the millimeter wave radar, actually, our manufacturing is CMOS. Yeah, before the millimeter wave radar is developed by another special manufacturing process.
Okay.
Yeah. So MediaTek is worldwide number one to adopt the standard CMOS process, and we develop antenna on the chip, technology to minimize the sensor.
That's right. So just to clarify for listeners who might not understand, because obviously I have a bit of background in this.
Yeah.
Instead of one of the big challenges today with a lot of sensors, that the sensor is mounted and then the electronics are not near the sensor. So you need to connect the sensor to the electronics in some way. And there's loss in signal quality, loss in performance because of that. So miniaturizing the sensors and being able to incorporate the chip that does the computing right on the sensor, or near the sensor in the same module is a huge deal for the automotive industry. And from what Boris was showing us, in fact, we got to touch some samples. Yeah. I think you guys are really, you're right there. You're doing this thing, putting the compute right next to the sensor, which is really interesting.
Yes. Yeah. Actually, I think sensor, we want to replace the traditional ultrasonic sensor is our first step. Okay. But if we have the sensor signal, actually we can do the sensor fusion to using the sensor as a feedback signal to know the current environment of the car. Right. Yeah. Right. So we will gradually based on this sensor to develop our system algorithm to do the parking car assistant, or in the future even for the ADAS car, driverless car, autonomous car. Actually, I think this is quite important sensor and algorithms to do some technology breakthrough. Yeah.
So Hadley, I know you wrote an article, and I'll put it in the show notes, about kind of comparing and talking about some of the MediaTek chips that are currently on the market. Can you quickly give us maybe an overview of what the different chips are and where they fit in the market?
Sure. I suppose we could stick to the 2018 releases. If you're gonna go by lowest end to highest end, you'd be looking your starting point, like for your Redmi 6A, for example, your $100 smartphone. That would be the Helio A22 chipset, and that's a quad-core chipset, A53, and it's pretty capable. It kind of goes up against like the very low end Snapdragon, the older quad cores, and like the 200 series. Mm-hmm. And it's built on a 12 nanometer process. So if you don't know what the manufacturing process is I'm referring to, it's quite small. It's very small for a $100 phone.
Yeah, to give you an idea, last year's top chips were running 10 nanometers. Modern chips today are just starting to come out with 7. So 12 for a low-end chip is a pretty good size chip, right?
Yeah, and it's been on the market for quite a while now. If I remember correctly, I think it was a few months ago, Qualcomm announced a couple of their own chips, and they only just announced that it was 12 nanometers, and MediaTek's been there for a while. They already have products on the market. And then moving on a little bit, if you go up a little bit, probably in your $150 phones to $200 phones, you have the P22, which is basically octa-core and also 12 nanometers. But the cool thing about both of these phones is they have Bluetooth 5, which is which you don't really find.
You don't see that unless on the competition, unless you go to the very high end, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then Qualcomm has quite a few older chips MediaTek has quite a few older chips kind of in between the P22 and the P60. But the P60 and P70, very similar chips. They are kind of like your mid-range to upper mid-range chip at the moment.
Yeah.
And it's also, I think, if I remember correctly, the CTO of MediaTek, Kevin Zhou. Yes. I interviewed him at MWC, and he compared the P60 to the Snapdragon 660.
Okay.
And he said that was kind of what they were targeting in terms of performance and everything. And on paper, the CPU side, definitely you're seeing 4 powerful cores, the 4 energy saving cores, which is normally, you don't see that very often in the mid-range, actually, at all. It's quite rare, and it's actually this year that you're starting to see those powerful cores come into the mid-range. So, cool. Yeah.
So Jerry and Kevin, tell us a little bit more, maybe about the kind of the roadmap going forward, as much as you can. I'm interested in finding out. I know the P60 devices are out right now. The P70 was just announced. There's probably more coming, and you don't have to elaborate on that. I'm more curious about what we're going to see. Like, are we going to see a chip soon that kind of goes for the high end of the market from MediaTek? Yeah. Is that coming?
Yeah. Sure. I think for the marketing, MediaTek will try our best to develop the new technology and continuously have the new product launch. Yeah. So except the P60, P70, everyone I think is quite take care about maybe our 5G solution. Yeah. So
let's talk about the 5G solution.
Yes.
It's the M70, right?
Yes, yeah, we already officially announced in middle of this year, we will have our first generation 5G modem solution, in M70. Yeah, it will be launched next year.
Great. So what are you talked a little bit about the strategy today, about what you're targeting with this modem, right? You said that it's primarily about sub-6, which is one of the big pillars of 5G technology, and I think your target market, you said, was mostly China. Is that correct?
Our first targeting market maybe is aiming to China first. Yeah, so that's why sub-6 gigahertz is our first step. Mm-hmm. But I think for MediaTek point of view, we still want to aim in the global market. Yeah, so.
Oh, of course. I meant immediately. The first market.
First.
Yeah.
We also expected the 5G will be happen in China first. Yeah.
No, that makes sense in terms of sub-6. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, the US is very focused on millimeter right now, but we're talking about millimeter for infrastructure, really, basically. Fixed use, right? Like from our homes and offices, where you're beaming instead of sending through fiber.
In the coverage range.
And it's line of sight, and it's going to degrade with the bad weather, which will be really interesting. Yeah. But I mean, millimeter has its challenges, but I think it's a very important thing, because if you look 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, we need to master millimeter wave. There's no other way to get the speeds we want, the bandwidth we want, the low latency we want. We're going to end up with handheld devices that are covered in antennas but it's going to be, I think it's going to be interesting, because it's going to bring new designs to light. And it's going to be really a challenge to make a phone that no matter how you hold it, there's enough antennas uncovered to get. Right. So I'm imagining a future, like I've been saying this for years now, where I really think the future of the people are saying there's no innovation in smartphones. And I think they're so wrong, because in the same way as we still use laptops and GUI-based interface, and then for some people, like developers, they still use command line, like there is a very, very clear paradigm of use of touching whether a tablet or even a small screen on your wrist or a handheld palm-sized device. That is going to continue, and these devices might not become the main part of our lives anymore in the future. Maybe we'll talk to the speaker all the time instead. Right. But the reality is that modality is going to continue to exist. And to me, I think the future of smartphones is every pixel, so to speak, of your phone's surface area is emitting light, receiving light, so it's a camera,
Yeah.
is emitting sound, receiving
Yeah.
sound, and is emitting RF and receiving RF,
Yeah.
and is a compute element. So basically you have the entire phone covered in antenna, microphone, speaker, display, camera, and RF, antenna. I think that's where we're going, because if you look at it, it's inevitable. And of course, we're far from that. We're going to need some serious nanotechnology for that to happen. But I think, people, and of course, that's going to allow some form factors that are crazy, because you're not going to be limited anymore to a rectangle or a square or, even just slightly curved designs.
Like classic Nokia, those circular phones.
Oh, do you remember the bendable ones?
Yeah.
So I think, look, I know I'm deviating, but that's what this podcast is all about. Tangents are very much encouraged.
You're not passionate about this, are you?
No, I think it's not exciting at all.
I think what we're seeing with 5G is different regions are all picking their flavor, right?
Yeah,
whether they're starting with
absolutely.
sub-6 or millimeter wave. And eventually where it's going to end up, everyone's going to have both. MediaTek is clearly going to support both sub-6 and millimeter wave. It'll be just a matter of time and where it makes sense to roll it out as a business case as well, right?
So, absolutely. So one of the things that I didn't hear, or at least I don't remember hearing any of the presentations today, was, have you made any chips that have built-in modems?
Only? Modems only?
No, chips and modems combined. Like Qualcomm is very good at this, right?
Oh.
So I'm wondering if MediaTek has any products where the radio, the LTE radio, is built into the chip.
Yes, actually, I think modem investment is a quite important technology for MediaTek. Yeah. So we also utilize this technology, expand to another product line. So just like a tablet. Yeah, tablet with the modem or tablet with the Wi-Fi only.
Right.
Yeah, this is our new product line using this technology and the application to another industry. Yeah, and just like the automotive, I think in the future we also need just like the e-call or telematics. Yeah, we also will full utilize the modem technology. Yeah, so that's why in our automotive product line, the telematics products is also another area we using this technology to the new application.
So, but do you have a chip currently on the market that has the 4G LTE modem built into the chip?
You're talking about integrated
Like a
modems.
single chip? Because, like a lot of the Qualcomm, you don't know. Okay, that's fair.
I don't know the answer
I'm
to
just
that.
curious.
Yeah.
Because that's, it brings economies of scale in terms of power and manufacturing, right? And real estate inside the phone, which I think is why.
I thought it was a given.
Yeah, a lot of people want it. So I'm curious. I'm trying to figure out as well where, you're expanding in the automotive space. Where do you think we're going to see the smart speaker evolve and go? Because obviously right now it's evolving already. We have smart displays coming. And I have a Google Home Hub now at home, review unit from Google. Yeah. And honestly, it's a really great device. And I didn't think that adding a small display would make a huge difference, but it does. You feel that some stuff is easier to present visually. So when you ask for the weather, that it can show you the forecast visually while it's telling you what the weather is. And you don't often, to me, it's not even about being able to touch the screen, which obviously you can do, but it's even just having a calendar displayed when it tells you what your next meeting is. So you can actually visually see what your schedule is going to look like for the day before it even tells you. So I'm wondering if you see that as, if in your strategy going forward, do you see the audio and display smart speaker cohabitating an equal number? Or do you think we're going to see more display-based speakers? Or do you think the audio-only speaker is going to remain the staple because of cost, right? It's possible that people don't want to spend money. And if they can buy an Echo Dot at Christmas for $29, which I think is what they were selling for last year at Christmas, or Black Friday or whatever it was. I bought two because I was like, whatever. That's like 4 or 5 espressos in San Francisco. I don't care at that point, right?
I remember when I was in the US, because we don't have Google Home Minis in South Africa, so they were doing 3 for $100 at Walmart, and I bought 3 Google Home Minis.
So what do you think? Where do you think what are the trends you're seeing? Where do you think that product? Because you own that product space right now. So tell us about the future of that product space.
Yes, actually, I think the smart speaker is a new product concept driven by the AI technology. Yeah, especially at the cloud side, the AI technology become mature. So this technology drive this new product concept. Yeah. So for smart speaker, the past 3 years, the worldwide shipment is from around 3 million in 2016 and 30 million in 2017.
Wow.
And this year, we expect it can reach around 60 million worldwide. So
That's a lot.
yeah. So with this huge growth, I think is based on the 3 key elements. Yeah, from my point of view. First of all, smart speaker it already become like a home hub.
Yeah.
Yeah, to control all the devices in the home. Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is their market positioning. Secondly, smart speaker drive the new human and the device interface. Actually, before we using gesture, we using touch, and in the computer age, actually the keyboard is the human interface between human and the devices. Yeah. So actually, the audio, the language is the most natural language to communicate with the device. Mm-hmm. So especially in some environment, just like at home, smart speaker already recognized as a successful product in the home, and we watch the trend. Use this audio interface already gradually expanded to different industry, just like in the automotive. Yeah, the hands is busy to handle the wheel, but yeah. So I think the audio interface is quite natural in the home, in automotive, when you drive in the car. Yeah, and secondly, except the audio module already expanded to different devices, and let the audio become the new interface between human and the devices. And the last one is even for the smart speaker, there has 2 trends. Yeah, as you mentioned, for the high end, we think the smart speaker will gradually have the screen to let the interaction with a human being, or it will be more convenient for this device.
Absolutely.
And in the more high end, it will build in the camera inside. Mm-hmm. So we can use the AI technology to implement more fruitful features in the smart speaker product line.
Yeah, I think that, it'd be really great. Like for me, my kind of holy grail of this audio speaker controlled AI world we're starting to live in is that Google's very good, and I use it primarily. Yep. And I find that I can have almost conversations with it because it knows so much about my life. But the problem is I always have to use a keyword. If I have to pause for a little bit of time, it stops being there for me. And what I would love is, and this could be done with, again, microphone arrays, but it could also be done with a camera where it has a context of where I am in the room. Yeah. So it can see me if, we have a tendency, even when we talk to a smart speaker, to look at it or like lean towards it, right? Do. Yeah. And I catch myself doing that all the time because my Google Home is behind me, in my comfy chair in the living room. So I always look backwards at it. And I know it doesn't make a difference, but I do it unconsciously. And I think that if the camera could see that, they'd be like, oh, it's talking to me, not talking to another human. Right. Or there's no other human in the room, right? Yeah. Maybe you could get the data from the thermostat that has an infrared sensor and can see how many people are in the room, right? It doesn't have to be visual data. It can be thermal data. It can be a whole bunch of other stuff. And so I'm looking forward to that happening because, and I think that's the other thing, honestly. I feel that the future of the smart speaker Whether it has a display or not is really going to be a personal choice and personal taste and a cost thing. Camera is the same. I think some people are going to be a little put off by that at first. We're seeing that particularly with Facebook, right? Yeah. With Portal, it's not being well received because it's Facebook, not because it has a camera per se, but it's compounded by the fact that it has a camera, I think. Yeah. And the fact that it doesn't do anything else in messaging. But the thing is, I think that, I want to see these devices have a Wi-Fi router in each, like the home speaker has the Wi-Fi mesh router in each home speaker and has the ability to talk to multiple assistants in one speaker. Yeah. Because eventually there's still going to be fragmentation. And I want to see the ability for the home speaker to have a temperature sensor so it can talk to the HVAC system. Yeah. That way you don't have to have, like right now if I look at my living room, it's a nightmare. I have a Nest on my wall. I have an Alexa Echo, an Amazon Echo. I have a Google Home Mini. I've got all these devices. I've got a Ring camera on my doorbell, which is right on the door. I've got a couple of Nest cameras. It's all different ecosystems. They don't talk to each other very well. But more importantly, people in your house all the time. I'm replicating stuff, right? I don't need to necessarily have a thermostat in that room. All I need is a temperature sensor. And to talk to the thing to set the temperature or ask it, what's the temperature right now? Yeah.
I think you're outlining in practical ways all the things that Jerry just talked about technology-wise.
Right, exactly.
And Jerry said something today that I thought was good, that the voice assist and smart speakers are going to be a breakthrough point for innovation. And that's all those things you just talked about. The door is kind of wide open of what's going to happen, whether it's inside the home or even somewhere else in the car, of what you're going to do with voice. It's natural, and I think people are going to come up with different and easier ways to use it. Yeah, we joked too about, show a little bit of my age, but what was the thing that turned on the lights years ago that we always made fun of? The clapper. Right? The clapper. That was the quickest, fastest user interface ever.
That was the Amazon Echo of its time.
It was. And so now, voice is so easy. Before it was, you take out your phone, you got to open the app, and then you tell it to turn on lights.
You got to find the app first.
Yeah, you got to find it.
So it was Microsoft Sam.
Yeah. So it's eliminated a lot of steps that I think people will continue to find new ways to use that.
No, absolutely. And I do think that, as we move forward with this technology, it's an enabler in so many areas, people with disabilities, people that are old, people that are young, right? Everyone can talk to the computer, basically. Yeah. And it's so much more intuitive than touching a screen or using a mouse or whatever else we've been doing all along. And so I think you have a great opportunity there. And as a leader in that space, I hope that you can drive your customers, the brands you work with to adopt some of your vision in that and I think that's one of the things we're seeing, for example, from some of your competitors in their own spaces, that they're defining technologies that are becoming so critical to the brands that are using these technologies that they just have to adopt them. Yeah. And I want to see MediaTek do that, because I think that would kick ass. Right?
We think so too.
Yeah. So cool. Well, listen, thanks for being on the show. I really appreciate you also hosting us here at MediaTek today and giving us great presentations and showing us around campus and everything else.
It was great to have you here and get to show off some of our products and technology.
And just so you know, listeners, I have an Oppo A3 device with a MediaTek P60 to take for a spin. So I'm super excited that I haven't had many MediaTek devices, phones to review in my life. So I know, Hadley, you've touched a lot more.
We'll have to fix that.
A couple, yeah.
So
I was going to say, can we hire Hadley for a tech evangelist for a while? He knows as much about our chipsets as our engineers.
So I think
the product, our P60 Oppo devices.
Yeah. Wow. So I'm looking forward to trying that out. So there is some other news this week, and I want to talk about it a little bit. The Samsung follow-up on last week's folding phone story, whatever, that we covered. I had David Lum on the show from Tech Radar, and we actually covered, a lot of it. But there's been news today, so do you want to tell us about it?
So apparently, news out of Korea, Yonhap News reports that essentially the Samsung foldable phone could launch in March, and the price might make you cry a little, because it's It's pegged at over $1,700. The equivalent price, 2 million won. So, this is basically more expensive than like the Porsche Mate kind of phones and all that.
But do you expect anything else? Come
No,
on. I mean,
no,
the complexity
it's
on
not.
this thing
No.
is insane, right?
Exactly. I think if they sold, I think if you were expecting a $1,000 phone, I think it would be the Note 9 was $1,000, right?
Yeah.
I think that is kind of that. I wouldn't say it's the new normal, but that ultra premium tier of phones has become like, the Mate 20 Pro, the Note 9 has become that kind of more expensive phone. And that's like the new normal almost. And now, the limited edition phones are well over 1,300, 1,400, or in this case, probably 1,700.
Yeah, absolutely. That still puts us, let's see, how much does the Mate 20 RS cost?
I'm not 100% sure, but I know the Porsche, when the Porsche Mate RS came out with the P20 Pro, I think it was about $1,200 to $1,300. So it's $400 more, but come on.
I think it's close to 2,000 US actually, if I remember properly. It's really expensive.
Yeah.
But I mean, look, it's a luxury product. Like I touched one, I used one for a day, and it is it's amazing. I was so surprised how much more premium it felt than my Mate 20 Pro, despite the guts being pretty much identical.
Yeah.
And that, you pay for that. Some people will pay for that. So Galaxy F, I guess, is what it's going to be called.
Yeah.
And I honestly don't think it's going to be that early. I think that's very optimistic.
Yeah.
I think that we might see prototypes that are a bit beyond what we saw on stage, that we as journalists get a chance to do hands-on time with before launch, like around that time. But I don't see a launch for this until another year, honestly.
Yeah.
And then, so, I mean, what else do you think Samsung could be doing? I mean, I feel like the W series phones are an interesting candidate to get a folding display.
For sure.
Right. So tell people on the show, I don't think everybody knows about the W phones.
So Samsung's got a series of China only phones called the W series. So they essentially are clamshell phones, and you heard correctly. So they are Android smartphones with high-end specs. Using either that year or the following, mostly that year's chipset, the high-end chipset. And they, like last year's phone was actually Samsung, it was quite important, the W2018, because it was the first Samsung phone, with the dual aperture design.
Correct, yeah. And they always pioneer new stuff on these phones.
Exactly.
Generally, like when Samsung did the f/1.6 lens, the W series in the fall, just before I think the Galaxy S8 it was, got that lens.
Exactly.
And so the W phones are expensive. They're weird. They are primarily China only. So even if you try to import one, you're kind of SOL. They won't work in the West. And, but they are very cool looking phones. And there's something about like a Moto Razr type style device that has a full on, high-res touchscreen in the inside, and another exactly the same size on the front panel, so that when it's shut, you can still use it. There's something about that design.
That's begging for a foldable.
Right. So that's what I'm thinking. Like, imagine instead of having a numpad, that would become, something you can create with haptics, and you can have like a whole interface there.
Although, can you imagine using it as like a folded out, like a weird, like, tablet,
And I'm thinking, what we saw, a shrunk down version of what we saw on stage at the Samsung Developer Conference last year, would be what the W could evolve into. Yeah. Instead of being a clamshell portrait, it'd be a clamshell landscape.
Yeah,
basically.
exactly.
But still much smaller than what we saw. Like, I would love it so that when it's open, it's the size of a modern phone, like 5 inches, 6 inches. And then when it's closed, it's like a tiny thing that you put in your pocket, and it has a front display.
A palm phone, but not a Saki.
Exactly, totally. Palm phone by night, big, gigantic Mate 20X by day. You just unfold it. So the thing though is, the reason we're bringing up the W phone, the 2019, they're always named after the next year. That they come out late in the year, before the numbers. So 2019 is the current one that's about to launch. And
this one apparently, if I remember correctly, does not have a headphone jack.
Yes. So that it's not the only and first Samsung phone without a headphone jack, but the W kind of, again, tends to show us where Samsung's going. So we're all a little worried collectively, all of us nerds, that Samsung's going to remove the headphone jack from the Galaxy S10.
Yeah, for sure. And if that is the case, that would mean I think that LG is one of the few players left with high-end, a headphone jack in the high end, and I don't know actually what to make of that because I like LG phones in theory, but in practice,
Well, I'm worried about LG dropping the headphone jack eventually, purely on a cost measure thing. Like, I feel like LG right now, their mobile division is in the same boat as HTC was like 2 years ago. Yeah. They're a dying breed, and I don't want to say that because I want to be mean. I love their phones, but I just feel like they're not able to deliver, and certainly the sales aren't following. The big difference, and this is what might save LG Mobile, is that LG sells enough air conditioners and washing machines and fridges that they might be able to sustain the mobile business at a loss for another decade, right? Yeah. Because to them it's a pride thing, right? Samsung owns that space in their own country, South Korea. They're not going to let go. We want that duopoly. We don't want only one manufacturer to be from Korea.
That will also to an extent, obviously, Huawei is not from Korea, but they are, in competition. But monopolies are never good. Even in a country, it breeds what's the word? Complacency.
Complacency, yeah. So I think it's going to be interesting. Hopefully, the Galaxy S10 retains the headphone jack, and this is just an odd choice that they made for the W2019, maybe because it is a pretty space constrained device. Yeah. It always typically has a really tiny battery compared to what we're used to. So maybe they were just like, this was too complicated. Maybe it has an in-display fingerprint sensor as well. And who knows,
that seems to be missing. Yeah.
So we'll see how it goes. But that was interesting. And then let's see what else we got here. Lots of Samsung stories today. Do you want to talk about this Linux on DeX stuff? Somebody commented on Twitter to me on one of the previous podcasts, last week's podcast, saying, "Hey, can you install this and try it out?" Yeah. And I actually don't. I don't have a DeX dock or cable, but I've actually asked Samsung to send me a dock, so hopefully I'll get it. So I should be able to try it out. But have you tried it out?
Unfortunately, so here's the folly. Like, I love my company that I work for, but because of the location, so I'm in South Africa. And I don't get any devices anymore. At my previous job, I would get devices working for the local website. So all my colleagues get the devices. So no Note 9 for me or Tab S4 for me. Although I suppose we could ask the colleagues to kind of send a couple down. But I haven't played with them. But it's quite interesting. So it's limited to the Note 9 and the Galaxy Tab S4, which is weird because it's when DeX is Galaxy S8 supports Galaxy S8, S9, and a couple of these devices, the older devices. So it's a bit disappointing to see it not being supported. But Samsung's own system requirements states that you need 8 gig of storage and 4 gig of RAM. So you would think that a 4 gig of RAM flagship would be fine, but apparently not just yet.
Yeah, I saw it. I think I'm going to try it out. I'm going to try to get that DeX dock and let you know. I'm going to sign up for it. Yeah. I think it's interesting. I'm a nerd. I'm a big fan of trying out different OSs. I've been using Linux for years. I've been using Ubuntu as well. And so I think that having basically Ubuntu running on your phone as a desktop interface is a kind of a cool thing. So I want to kind of experience it. So thanks for suggesting that on the show. And thanks for Hadl for writing a story about an Android Authority that tied it in well together.
There's also one thing I remembered, I just realized, is that before you kind of go running and going, I'm going to run all my Linux apps on my phone, I believe the apps need to be compiled for ARM.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. No, but there's a pretty solid ARM, awesome. Linux for ARM ecosystem out there. Yeah. Because Raspberry Pi is Linux on ARM, so there's and also I would just probably use it out of the box, whatever they provide, just the web browser, just a desktop class web browser powered by my phone. Exactly. That is actually a viable, like Firefox or something, or Chrome. Yeah. Or Chromium probably, because it would be
better than Continuum as well.
Yeah, exactly. I think that would be pretty dope. Yeah. So this is an interesting tidbit of news for sure. And then, let's see, there was another thing. So this is not really a Samsung story, but it's related to Samsung because you wrote this story about, and the headline is, do we really need more than 3 rear cameras on a smartphone? And you know me and cameras and smartphones, we're big friends. But more importantly, this came up because the Galaxy A9 has 4 cameras in the back, which seems overkill. So I want to talk about that. And you wrote the story just for folks who are listening right now. All these stories that Hadl wrote that we just referenced are all going to be in the show notes. So I have 2 questions. I want to kind of divide it up into. One is specifically about Galaxy A9. I feel like they just did it for the sake of doing it because that 4th camera is only for depth sensing. Yeah. And you and I both know
you don't need
that
a 4th camera
you don't need a 4th camera for depth sensing.
Exactly.
So what were they thinking?
Personally, obviously can't speak for Samsung or whatever, but I think what they did was essentially kind of basically doing it so they can say they were first to do it.
Yeah.
So they can go, hey, look, we got a 4th camera. Sure, the quality might be, whatever, but yeah.
I mean, it's a mid-range phone.
Yeah.
I expect Samsung to deliver. I mean, in the sense that their imaging systems are pretty good on their phone.
I suppose if you're looking at, if you're comparing kind of image quality and, like reliable shooting, I always kind of put Apple and Samsung on a level playing field, and then, and Google as well, and Huawei, those kind of the big 4, I suppose.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it'll be interesting. So tell me, what else did you just, I mean, obviously we addressed the Galaxy A9 and the fact that we both feel it's redundant.
Yeah.
But to me, if that was a monochrome sensor, this would be very interesting.
That would be more interesting, yeah.
Right?
So there are other options that you could have put on your phone as a 4th camera instead of the depth sensor. You've got, maybe you could do another telephoto sensor, maybe if you wanted to do a 3 times telephoto, could give you smoother transitions from, your wide angle to your 1 times to your 2 times to your 3 times.
Oh, yeah.
You could go for a monochrome sensor, like you said, which might have the added benefit if you look at Huawei of delivering, better low light quality.
Yeah.
And then you get those dedicated low light cameras. I believe the Xiaomi Mi A2 has a dedicated low light camera.
Yeah.
Whether it has, larger pixels or just uses pixel binning. That could have also been, possibly, in theory, another option they could have done. So, it's a bit interesting, And there's also the question also that comes out of all of this is, space on smartphones is not infinite. It's one of the biggest issues in a smartphone, and one of the reasons why for the longest time, smartphone image quality was nowhere near your dedicated cameras. And it's only really now that we're starting to use like image stacking and machine learning and other cool techniques that we're starting to see the software bring out the best of the camera. So anytime you kind of you're making your sensors smaller to fit in more cameras, or for whatever reason, that's not a good thing.
Yeah. I mean, so for me, like, I definitely would love to see something from Huawei that has, 4 sensors in the back, specifically all the sensors we already have. Basically combine the Mate 20 Pro and the P20 Pro, right? So, bring back the monochrome camera and add that.
Yeah.
Because the true monochrome is really nice. And that f/1.6 lens was so fast, combined with the large sensor, like large number of pixels, give you lots of detail. Yeah. And it was really good for that. But there's another thing that's interesting. Last week we talked about the Oppo R17, which, as you know, it has a rear camera system with a time of flight, 3D depth sensing, Kinect style thing, which usually we see on the front facing, like on the Oppo Find X and on the, obviously the Mate 20 Pro and the iPhones. But, to me, putting on the rear is kind of smart. Yeah. So it requires, of course, an infrared illuminator, an infrared camera, a dot projector. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that comes in with this package. But it technically is another camera because you really are creating you're basically having an infrared camera. Yeah. So, I mean, a 4th camera could also be a thermal camera. Yeah. It could be, infrared.
A cat camera,
like the Cat S61, which, by the way, I'm reviewing right now.
Serious?
I'm just playing with it. I've got one. It? Well, I've had very little time with it. I reviewed the S60, which also had the FLIR imaging sensor on it before. So this is kind of a modern version of that phone. It's a mid-ranger. It's very expensive. It's $1,000. But if you're clumsy and you want something that's literally bulletproof almost, that's the phone to get. I mean, it's still a pretty decent mid-ranger, and it's got the FLIR, so, But go back to the space thing that you talk about is really interesting, because the Galaxy A9 is a big phone, but for smaller phones, it becomes a huge constraint really quickly, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when it comes to smaller phones in general, you're obviously opting for the older sensors and all that kind of, things. And there aren't many things you can do, especially when you have a budget constrained device, in terms of making the a multiple camera setup work. So I always admire when companies can do things like going for four cameras, and
it's fun.
Yeah, exactly. It shakes up the industry. It's maybe not necessarily in a good way or whatever, but it gives a bit of unpredictability. But there are these questions you have to kind of ask yourself as a manufacturer. Because even with dual cameras, when we switch to dual cameras, there's a reason why Google's probably still sticking to the single camera setup. It's because you have one large sensor, and you might not have to worry about shrinking that sensor for the secondary sensor.
Yeah.
So there is obviously Google showing us that a single camera setup can still be fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, they're using the dual pixel autofocus pixels for depth sensing by using the parallax on each pixel.
Exactly.
So I mean, it's really two cameras in one if you think about it.
Yeah.
And that's Samsung's using that on their phones too, but for they're not using it for depth sensing as in the same way as Google is. They're using it for autofocus depth sensing. But if you think about it, phones like the iPhone XR that only have a single lens, or even the Galaxy S9 regular that only has a single lens, those two phones have dual pixel autofocus pixels, and they could potentially be used for parallax, but I don't think they're doing that because I think Google kind of somehow mastered that before everyone else.
Some black magic.
Yeah, some crazy AI going on there. So I think it's interesting. I want to talk about speaking of cameras and since we are in Taiwan and we're close to China, speaking of crazy phones, the Lenovo Z5, you covered that as well. Tell us about it.
Sure. So the Z5 Pro, I mean, Lenovo's been teasing it on we've over at Android Authority, we've been following or trying to follow Weibo for a while now. Every time they post something, on the official account, and they've been teasing this phone for ages with samples and all that, all those kind of things. And it made us think of I can't remember. I think it was the Lenovo Z5 where they teased a notchless phone, which ended up being ended up being a notched phone. But the Z5 Pro, it's the latest slider phone on the market. And so yes, if you had a D500 and you missed the Samsung D500 or those other phones that were classic slider feature phones, this might be for you.
LG chocolate.
Exactly.
That our good friend David Kogan, who's on this trip with us, the Unlocker, he found one here at the electronics market in Taipei. He found an old classic LG chocolate slider. This looks a lot like the Mi Mix 3 and the Honor Magic 2.
It does.
So it's not an electric slider; it's a mechanical slider. Like you do it by yourself.
Which I quite like.
Does it have some sort of depth sensing front camera?
It seems to be the case, but then apparently it's more for IR face recognition. So it's that's become super popular this year. Your IR face recognition along with your 3D face unlock, but it's going for IR. It's not going for anything super cutting edge. And then it's got a 16 and 24 megapixel camera setup on the back. So technically 4 cameras, but if I'm not sure if the 8 megapixel IR camera can be used for anything else. I doubt it. So technically it will probably only be 3, but they're claiming 4.
Okay.
But
what's interesting to me, and that's why I wanted to put this in there, because it was announced on November 1st. It's 2 weeks old now. Probably should have been discussed on last week's podcast when we talked about the Mi Mix 3 and the Honor Magic 2. But what is interesting to me is their choice of processors. Snapdragon 710. This is one of the first with a Snapdragon 700.
Yeah, definitely.
And that chip, in case you forgot, actually exists. And it's a upper mid-range, lower high-end chip. So it's kind of like cut the difference between a 660 and an 845.
Yeah, exactly. That naming convention gives it away straight away. It's slotting right in between those two chips. There was, if I remember correctly, there was one other major brand that had it, and that was Xiaomi with the Mi 8 SE.
Right.
So that was a 710 chip. And you can kind of see the choice of chip reflected in the price, which is the equivalent of just under $300. So, it is it is one of the cheapest ones.
So it's the cheapest slider quote. I can't believe we're talking about slider phones again.
Yeah.
But I'm going to say now, from now on, and when I say slider, you know what I mean. It means that the front-facing camera is behind a slider. So it's the cheapest slider on the market.
Yeah, that seems to be the case. Tentatively speaking, but obviously, you know what happens when it's a China-only phone, and inevitably, what happens when the phone gets brought over to other markets. At least in my country, you see the price go up quite substantially. But I think still, even at the price it was 1,900 won. So that's still pretty good. About $300. By comparison, the Mi Mix 3 had a starting price of $475. And the Honor Magic 2 at a starting price of about $550. So, definitely one of the cheapest phones on the market. And, it's actually really interesting. Do you think that the slider smartphone will stay for the next year or two?
I think it's cool. I think it brings back tactility to the phone, which we're missing. Like that kind of, when you were at a slider or a flip phone, you would play with it. Yeah. Or you'd hang up on somebody angrily. I kind of like that. I think that we lack tactility in our world right now. Everything is digital. And so I think that's, in that sense, people are going to like it. And, the flip side is you can't make them waterproof. They're physically more fragile because you have moving parts. So don't drop them, especially not in water. Yeah. But I mean, look, that's a minor thing. I think they're going to be around for a little while until we can solve, what they're trying to solve, which is, until we can find a way to not have a notch or a teardrop or whatever in the front of the display and yet still have a complete full display in the front. So I think we'll see. I mean, who knows? I like new forms. Well, not new. This is not new. But I like the idea of having a form factor choice. Yeah. I feel that I really want to get my hands on one of these sliding phones just to kind of experience it. And I'm glad there's more and more, because that means that, who knows, maybe OnePlus will give us one next time.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm on board because obviously Oppo and Vivo, have done, or, well, maybe they haven't yet, but they will probably be doing slider phones soon. That means that, BBK will as well, right? So
yeah, for sure. I think the possibility for me, or at least in my opinion, I think I think we'll see them in the next 18 months. And then I think we'll probably see them taper off as, Samsung announced that their plans to get that camera under the display and all these kind of things where we don't need the notches and stuff. So I do foresee, maybe this is just me being whatever, but I do foresee us, maybe in the next 2 years, going all screen without the need for a slider.
Yeah, I think that's inevitable. And I'll be interested to see how they solve that problem.
For sure.
I think there's going to be a whole next generation of phones coming that have basically a tiny hole in the display somewhere for the front-facing camera. And then the earpiece will be along the edge of the screen as a slit, like it is on the OnePlus 6T, for example. And then it won't be a notch because it won't be a cutout out off the edge of the display. It'll literally be a hole somewhere in the display that they will know not to put any text there, right? It could be anywhere, probably on the top somewhere. I can see that happening before we get the complete full screen.
Yeah, for sure.
Or the other alternative is with OLED. We're seeing this with the in-display fingerprint readers. I recently got a chance to try I shouldn't say try because I have it, obviously. The OnePlus 6T and the Mate 20 Pro both have the in-display fingerprint readers. And if you look, there's a camera under the display and it's reading your fingerprint through the display.
Exactly.
So think about this for a second. What if we could make a front-facing camera that took the photo through the screen? Yeah. Right? So what we need is more light sensitivity because you're going to lose some sensitivity going through that OLED screen. We need a faster f-stop for that or better pixel sensing pixels. But to me, that's yet another step we're going to see. But it's inevitable that at some point, we're still going to want front-facing cameras. And we're going to want, face unlock kind of sensing systems. And for that, we need We need to somehow find a way to put them under the display in the front. And they're going to find a way. I'll tell you an example of this, very basic version of this. When I worked at Pebble, on the Pebble Steel, I think it was, or maybe some of the other ones after that, but we had the light sensing element underneath the display.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
That's insane.
because that's the only place we could put it.
Yeah. That's really interesting. So it just shows you that it's possible, and
that was just for brightness. It was, it didn't have to resolve an image. Yeah. All you had to do is get an idea of how bright the environment it was.
Yeah. Once you have to actually take a picture, it becomes way more complicated.
It's very complicated. Yeah. But I'm just saying, like, it's not like it hasn't. It's not impossible.
Yeah. It's not out of the realm of possibility for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we're good. This is a good show. I want to give you an opportunity to tell people where they can find you on the internet, like your Twitter, your Instagram, your YouTube, if you have one, and of course Android Authority.
Yeah, sure. Let's start with the company. So if in case you don't know, you can find us on Instagram and on Twitter's Android Auth, and Instagram's Android Authority, and Facebook as well, obviously. Otherwise, I'm mainly just on Twitter. That's the main front, account that I respond to, and that's just Hadley Simons. One word. Thank you.
Fantastic. Yeah. Do you want to tell people where they can find you on Instagram? Because your Instagram is fun.
Yeah, I don't like my handle, but I don't want to change it. It's prophylactic. It sounds so...
It's like prophylactic without a P. Yeah. Instead, there's a B.
I think there was just a phase where I was just going through pro puns. Because I love my puns.
Oh my God. If you guys have not met Hadley before, the puns coming out of this guy's mouth, awesome.
Awful, but okay.
No, I think it's entertaining. So I want to let you know where you can find me. I think you all know, but those of you who are new to the show, I'm at Tank Girl, like the comic book character Tank Girl, but you drop the vowels because, this was in the 90s and somebody had taken the handle. So I invented the Flickr thing before everyone else. Had Tank Girl, TNKGRL. That's my Twitter handle. It's also my Instagram handle. You can find me there. I also suggest you follow me on YouTube. That's my full name spelled out. So youtube.com/Miriam Joire, Miriam with a Y, Joire, Joire. The reason I bring this up is because the YouTube channel is a complement to this podcast. We are talking about a lot of phones right now. Like I mentioned earlier when we were talking to the MediaTek folks that I have an Oppo A3. Well, guess what? You're going to see an unboxing of that phone in the next day or two, and that'll be on my YouTube channel. So subscribe, like the videos, tell your friends, and most importantly, subscribe to the podcast. It's mobiletechpodcast.com. I'm on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Pocket Casts, Overcasts, Stitcher, Slacker, TuneIn Radio, everywhere. And if you can't find me, just add Tanker on my handle at the end of Mobile Tech Podcast, because there's a lot of keywords that hit that. A lot of podcasts use those 3 words. So, you subscribe, tell your friends, all that stuff. I also want to thank our sponsor, audible.com. If you want to listen to books instead of reading them, they are the place to go. They are awesome. They have a huge selection of books. I listen to them in the car on long road trips, sometimes on the plane because my eyes are tired and I want to kind of maybe doze off to a book or something. It's a great thing to do. There is a link in the show notes. If you follow through with that link and you're not already a subscriber, you'll be able to join and it will help the podcast. So do that if you are not yet a subscriber and you want to try it out. You can try it for free for 30 days, so don't worry about it. And the link is audibletrial.com/mobiletech. That's audibletrial.com/mobiletech. So go to the show notes, click on that, and help the podcast along. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Hadley, for being on. It was really awesome.
Thank you so much. It was really fun.
Yeah, great stuff. Yeah. And here we are in Taiwan, which is even more fun.
Exactly.
So stay tuned for another show next week, folks. Bye, everybody.
Cheers.
This has been the Mobile Tech Podcast with Tank Girl, proudly presented by worldpodcasts.com. You can visit us online at mobiletechpodcast.com.